Hey guys, and welcome back to Brexit. Brexit England, Northern Ireland and Eastern Europe. And in Brexit England, I don't like to be the bearer of bad news or the wearer of new shoes. But did you know in Brexit Britain, there are people who are leaving this country to go to a war zone to get medical treatment? I don't know how this has ever managed to come to this, right? Where you've got people from Ukraine who are just like, you know what? Yeah, I tried using the NHS and that shit was fucked up. So now I'm taking myself back to a war zone to go and get medical treatment. I know our NHS is in a really bad way because we've got things like ambulances that should be taking they said 18 minutes, I think they've said, but obviously it used to be a lot quicker than that. 18 minutes now, that's what it should take, right? But they haven't hit those figures for years anyway. But it's on average about 90 minutes. So obviously that's, if you're a person who's waiting like 90 minutes for an ambulance, if you're like having a heart attack or a stroke, then that's no good to you. Right, if you're, or if you've had an accident on a construction site, to have to wait 90 minutes for an ambulance when you could be bleeding to death, that's no good for you at all, right? So, to know that people, like obviously this is Ukraine I'm talking about, to know that people are leaving this country to go back to the Ukraine, it's no wonder, because our NHS is in such a shocking state. It's in, there's so much different things that are going wrong with our NHS. And I mean, one of the main things is it needs so much members of staff. But how are you going to attract more members of staff, right, when we've got a hostile environment, first of all, in this country towards any person who wants to come here and work? Obviously there's a level of racism that they have to face, xenophobia and bigotry that they have to face, obviously, in the workplace. And then there's the fact that our pound is worth nothing. And then, the utility cost in this country costs so much. So you're asking people to come from other countries where the utility cost could be, the cost of living might be a lot, we might have a higher cost of living than them, but I don't know how that works out nowadays. But we could have a higher cost of living, but our living costs are so much higher. So in their country, they might be facing a different kind of poverty in their country, but they're not facing a poverty of like a fuel crisis poverty like the people in this country are facing, with regards to gas and electric. They're facing there's so much people who can't actually use those services, so they're facing so I don't understand that. Well, as I said, I can understand why Ukrainians are doing this, because everything in this country, wherever you look at it, everything in this country is just falling to pieces, right? And you have to say, well, this is 12, 13, basically 13 years of the Tories, right? Austerity for however long, and that's what's done, most of this for us, is the austerity measures, because now, they can't get, it's virtually impossible to get staff in the NHS. They can't train up enough from this country. So they actually need foreign workers to come over, right? And now, if even if those people want to come over, they've got to be doing jobs that, I can't remember what it is, but it's got to be over 30 odd grand, I think, right? So that's the instant they have to be taken. But as I was saying before, right, it's difficult to get those people to come over now because of the hostile environment, the racism, I could even throw in the low wages, right? The cost of living over here, the fact that our pound is shot. Right? All of these things are blocking people from coming to this country to work. Right. But these people still seem to think that there are millions of people who want to come here. Right. And I'm telling you, there is a very small pool now, and the NHS is showing that, because the NHS has got nearly 150,000 vacancies. Right. And that's just something that's just that's just something that's it's unmanageable, because now you know there's so much people in the NHS. This is why so much people are leaving the NHS, because you know they're asking them to do hours where where they're not being paid for. Because there's a lot of these guys are salaried, so they're just can do you mind staying for an extra hour or an extra 2 hours? Right, so that's happening. It's just natural with the NHS. It's just natural, especially when you're talking about like the people who actually work on the shop floor, so the nurses and the junior doctors. Right? So a lot of these junior doctors are sleeping in the hospitals because they're working so much. So it's so that's why the NHS, right, is in such a state. And it will continue to be in such a state unless England, right, changes from being a disgusting, racist, xenophobic, bigoted cesspit of a country. Until it stops doing that, right, our NHS is going to be buggered, is the appropriate term, I believe. And welcome back to By Any Means Necessary. Thank you so much for all your messages. And a special thanks to everybody who signed up to my channel. I feel so blessed with so much people that have signed up. So thank you so much for that. I'll go through all your messages. I'll answer as many as I can. But I will like all your messages for definite. And where are we starting? I don't know why I haven't got this up. I didn't have this up already. I don't know why. Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been calling Jack Smith, he's the special prosecutor, a terrorist. And Donald Trump really needs to mind his language, because you see all of the talking what Donald Trump is doing, he's going to have the special prosecutor going after him because of all that language. So Donald Trump really needs to mind what he's saying, because I can see that the special prosecutor is going to use all of this against him. And if he can bring charges against Donald Trump and some of the things what Donald Trump has been saying about him, because he mentioned all his family and all these type of things. So if he can bring charges against Donald Trump, I'm quite sure that he will do, because he's a very serious prosecutor. A self-driving Tesla has stopped. If you see this thing, it just stopped in a tunnel, right? And just 9 cars piled up behind it. Right, a self-driving Tesla, right? Because the guy said he was in there, but it was being driven on full automatic mode, so full self-driving mode, because I believe some of them can do that. Obviously, it must be the latest ones can do that, right? But this thing just stopped. 9 cars, bam, piled up behind it. Italian mob boss that has been on the run for over 30 years was arrested. If you see this guy, right, because when you see the pictures of him from when he was in his 30s and now he's 60, right, so he's just his transformation, right? What's his name? Masano Durano, right? Denarano. He's been arrested, right, after 30 years. I think it's something like 33 years of being on the run. Do you know what I mean? And like they've tried him in his absence for many murders. This guy, many murders he's been tried in his absence for. But obviously now he's just going to spend the rest of his life in prison. But he was at some private clinic having treatment, and they must have found out, and next thing his ass is busted, right? And now he's not leading the life of lavish luxury like he probably was before, because obviously, to go missing for 30 years, right? Probably you've probably got to be very rich to be able to go missing for that length of time, because if you're not rich, it's a lot harder for you to hide. But if you're rich, you can probably hide a bit, especially if you're not right in people, literally loud and not in people's faces, you can probably hide a bit better. And I don't know if you've seen this plane crash in Nepal. I think there was about 70 or 80 people on this plane. I don't think anyone's. Well, when you see the state of the plane, it doesn't look like anyone could have survived it anyway. And I think they've still got 4. They're still searching for another 4 people or something like that. The last reports I've heard. But I always think, when I see them stories, I always think, it's really amazing, because I believe in the thing, right, where you can't change the day you're born and the day you die. Those 2 days you can't change. It just depends on how you get there, obviously. But, so all those people, right, that was their day to die. That was, that's it. I mean, if you're, if you're in a pub, right, and there's loads of people in there, right, and someone shoots a gun from outside the pub and it hits you and kills just you out of everybody in the pub, that's because that was your day to die. Right, it's a stray bullet, but it wasn't meant for you. But it was just because it was your day to die. But it was meant for somebody else. But shit, that's how I think. That's how I believe that that life works. I believe if all of those people in that Nepal plane crash, I think that they would have died on that day, whether they had a heart attack or whether they died of cancer, or whether they got hit by a bus. It just so happened that they was all due to die and they all end up on that plane. Now you'd have people who will say, well, I was supposed to be on that plane, and 30 years later, I said, yeah, I was supposed to be on that plane in Nepal 30 years ago. I said, well, that's not the day you're supposed to die. Because you wouldn't, because if it was, you would have got on that plane. That's the thing, So that's the way how I look at those things. So just like, it's a very sad story what's happened to those people in Nepal. Very, very sad story. I don't know if you saw this, like what happened to the Arsenal goalkeeper. What's his name? Aaron Ramsdale, I think. But he got kicked in the back by a Tottenham fan after Arsenal bust up Tottenham yesterday 2-0. And it's on national TV, this guy's going to go do something so stupid. Some people, right? That's all you can say. Some people. I'm already over time already. The Elgin Marbles is due to be handed back after Britain for years have been saying, oh no, the Elgin Marbles, they're ours and we're going to keep hold of all of them. But I know they're going to give them back now. I don't know if you saw this, with 83-year-old Joan Slater, the Holocaust survivor who confronted Cruella de Braverman, about her language, the use of her language, like, invasion and these type of things, because obviously this woman is a Holocaust survivor, and she said this is the type of language that the Nazis started using, because, the Holocaust didn't just start with gas chambers, it started with gaslighting. Right, so this is the type of language that was used in the first place, so that they could get to the gas chambers. And Suella Braverman was just stood there and just said, well, I don't, I use that type of language and I'm not going to apologise for that. And, the Tories have come out, the Tories come out and said, well, what you have to do is you have to play the whole, because they was complaining about the clip, what's been on the news. So I said, well, you have to play the whole thing. And then the whole thing makes it even worse, because at the end of what Suella Braverman said, the people then was clapping. And he said, well, so the Jewish Holocaust survivor has just said to you, right, that the language, that's what she's complaining about. She's not complaining about, about how you're treating these people. She's complaining about the language, what you're using. The treatment of these people is something completely different. But the language, that's what she's complaining about. And these people in this audience saw, it's best for us to clap. So, yeah. It's very, very sad. A lot of what goes on in this country is very, very sad that people can clap, especially with that Jewish lady sat there when she's just said, something, your language reminds me of what happened to my family and how my family was exterminated by the Nazis. And you're using that similar type of language, and the people in there to Cruella de Braverman, clapping her after she's, it's just disgusting. Drive-by shooting in Houston in a church, outside a church. Sorry, I think this was a funeral. I think it was a memorial service or something like that. And some people decided they were going to go and do a drive-by shooting there, hitting 6 people, 4 women and 2 children, I think, and I think one of them was only 7 years old. But let's speak about some Brexit quickly, because I did want to speak about like the teacher strikes and minimum working standards, minimum service levels of work when people are on strike. But I'll speak about that another time. So we've got Brexit. We've got Brexit has left Northern Ireland wide open to food fraud, and that's obviously like, you know, dodgy meats and all these type of things. You know what I mean? And like, you know, things that the EU would not allow their citizens to consume. But we're all right with that. The UK to again hold talks with the EU to break the Northern Ireland Brexit impasse. And said, well, wasn't this all done? What the hell is all these talks about? And, you know, I know, right, that the EU must be charging Britain for all these negotiations, because they've got to be, really, because obviously if they've got all the red tape that they've got in front of all countries that are not in the EU, because it's not just us, it's all countries that are not in the EU. It's just affecting us the worst because we was in there before and we didn't have all of these before, so it's not affecting us in that way. But because now we're outside. Right, so all these things are affecting us. So I know that the EU must be saying, you know something, right? You've got to pay for all these negotiations. And you know, these negotiations must be costing us a right packet, because every minute you've got arses like James Cleverly, I think it's now, or James Not So Cleverly, as you like to call him, right? You know, we've got people like that, right, negotiating. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, well, you know, how much different Brexit negotiations have they had? And these people still haven't learned anything. They still haven't learned. You know something, yeah? We would be better off, right, in rather than out. They're still trying to say, well, you know, you need to give us a good deal because we're British. And that shit don't work no more. You can tell that just by the first thing that I was talking about, how we've got people leaving this country to go to a war zone to get medical treatment. Just shows you how low this country's gone. Brexit deal at risk. Amid fears, Rishi Sunak will cave to the EU's demands. These people, seriously, I just sometimes think of these people comedians. Look at me, I'm nearly on 20 minutes. I'm like 17 minutes. Right? I just think sometimes these people are comedians. Right? Rishi Sunak has been warned by the Democratic Unionist Party, so that would be the DUP, because these people don't understand politics. Right? And Tory backbenchers against caving to the EU, right, over regulations over the Irish Protocol. You think to yourself, seriously, haven't these people learned anything yet? You know what? I've just gone so far over on this video, so I'm going to wrap this up now. But just say, haven't these people learned anything? I don't think they have. I don't think they have. Anyway, guys, look, I'm going to wrap this up. This, my friends, is By Any Means Necessary. I'm the MC John Ribs. It was really nice to speak to you guys. Comments below.